Hey, welcome to Devotions Debrief, our chance to dig in a little deeper on the things talked about on Sunday. Today's devotion is based on a sermon I preached recently called The Superpower of Suffering, talking about Moses' attitude towards suffering. We see in his story how he starts off wanting to make a difference, but when he sees the consequences of it, the pain of it, the potential death of it, he runs from it. And it's not until his attitude is adjusted and he sees suffering is actually something that's good. Suffering will help me, will be part of the journey for both my maturity, but also for the help that comes to others. And suffering is not something to be rejected. And our attitude towards suffering is something that's really going to cap us in life. So we're looking at Hebrews chapter 12. I'm just going to read the next part of that passage, although I'll overlap a little bit because it's important for us to see the context. As God uses trials, suffering, pain, difficulty, he uses it to train us and discipline us. So Hebrews in chapter 12 starts out in verse 5, "Have you forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons, saying, 'My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, or be weary when reproved by him. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastises everyone he receives.' It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? And if you are left without discipline, in which all have participated, then you are illegitimate children and not sons." This passage, I think, has a lot to do with engaging our attitude of choice, our choosing to be part of a process that's drawing us into our true image as sons of God, as children of God. That we have a smaller and irregular and imperfect vision of ourselves. We don't see ourselves as we ought to, which is as fully adopted children of God. Now, part of that growth then, it is the attitude of choice that helps us to stay engaged. I don't know about you, but it's a big thing when we choose suffering, when we choose difficulty. It's actually sometimes not even the discipline or the suffering that's the biggest thing. It's the freedom to choose it that's the bigger thing. To welcome difficulty into our lives. In fact, to when we get an option of pursuing an easy path or a hard path, to actually on purpose choose the hard path shows a really great change of heart. So I actually think your choice with regard to suffering is as much of the job of the suffering as the suffering that produces the growth. Your attitude towards it, because he says this, it is for discipline that we have to endure. So maybe you're going through something right now in your life. Maybe you're in a process. If you're like me, you seem to always be in a process. And something in your life, I'm sure, is difficult. Maybe it's something that you're avoiding. Maybe it's something that you are going through, not even by your own choice. But even whether it is something that you are currently not engaged in or currently not happy to be engaged in, I would like you to engage choice. I would like you to make a decision that you want to be better, that you want to grow, that you want to make a bigger difference, that you want to be freer than you are right now. Because when you make that choice, you're going to get into discipline. You're going to purposely choose growth in your life. Now, the problem with our hearts is that we are oftentimes kind of in a quasi-rebellion against God. We are resistant to the things that we know are something that God wants in us. And so when he talks about these things, notice he talks about how the way that the God is disciplining us as a father, and it's that father-child relationship that he's trying to encourage. He says, if you're left without discipline, then you are become an illegitimate child. Now, here I think is a very, very important part of the process, that process of choosing. It's a process of choosing the family and to allow ourselves to grow from our immature vision of ourselves as children of God and grow into a fuller understanding of who we are as children of God. And when we reject God's values about loving the poor, about holiness, about avoiding sin, about growing from immature perspectives to mature perspectives. When we reject those things, it's like we're rejecting the family. We're rejecting the family way. And God is trying to call us into that family perspective to really feel like we're part of His. So I'd like you to think about that today. What choices are you making? Are you choosing to become more like God's family? Are you choosing to allow the Father's discipline? Are you welcoming it? And if you are, I really want you to feel God's encouragement that He's saying, yes, my son, my daughter, my child, well done. That's us, isn't it? This is what we do. We do this. We stick to it. We follow it through. So well done. And as you pray and meditate today on that, just reflect on how God is encouraging you and treating you like a child.